My husband brought his pregnant mistress into our bedroom and told me to sleep on the couch. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I smiled, packed one bag, and walked out the door holding a secret that would destroy them both. What I did next shocked everyone. Before we begin, write in the comments what city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy watching. The doorbell rang at 7:30 on a Tuesday night. I was in the kitchen stirring pasta sauce that had been simmering for an hour. The smell of garlic and basil filled the air. I heard my husband's footsteps moving quickly across the hardwood floor. He never moved that fast when I called him for dinner. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked toward the hallway. Through the archway, I could see him standing at the front door. His back was stiff. His hand gripped the doorknob like he was holding on to something that might slip away. When he opened the door, I saw her. She was younger than me, maybe 25. Her dark hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. She wore a long cream-colored sweater that hung loose over her body, but it couldn't hide what was underneath. Her belly was round and full, 5 months, maybe 6. Her hand rested on top of it like she was protecting something precious. 2 suitcases sat on either side of her feet. One was black, one was floral. Both looked heavy. My husband didn't turn around to look at me. He reached down and picked up both suitcases without saying a word. She stepped inside like she'd been here before, like she knew where everything was. I stood there in the hallway holding a wooden spoon covered in red sauce. "Emily," my husband finally said. His voice was quiet, careful. "This is Rachel." Rachel smiled at me. It wasn't a mean smile. It wasn't apologetic either. It was just a smile, like we were meeting at a coffee shop or a bookstore. Like this was normal. "Hi," she said softly. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat felt tight. My husband cleared his throat. "She's going to stay in the guest room for a while." For a while, those 3 words echoed in my head. I looked at her belly again, at the suitcases he was still holding, at the way she was already slipping off her shoes by the door like she lived here. "Okay," I heard myself say. My husband finally looked at me. His eyes were tired, maybe even relieved, like he'd been expecting me to scream or throw something or slam the door in her face. But I didn't do any of those things. I turned around and walked back into the kitchen. Behind me, I heard him carrying her suitcases up the stairs. I heard her soft footsteps following him. I heard the guest room door open and close. I stood at the stove and stirred the pasta sauce even though it didn't need stirring anymore. 20 minutes later, I set the dinner table. 3 plates instead of 2, 3 forks, 3 glasses of water. I moved like a robot. My hands knew what to do even when my brain didn't. I called them down for dinner. They came down together. My husband walked in first. Rachel followed a few steps behind. She'd changed into a soft pink dress that made her look even younger, even more innocent. She sat down in my chair, the one I'd been sitting in for 8 years, the one with the small coffee stain on the armrest that never came out. I didn't say anything. I sat in the chair across from her. My husband sat at the head of the table between us. We ate in silence for the first few minutes. I watched Rachel take small bites of her pasta. She chewed slowly, carefully, like she was nervous. "Can you pass the salt?" she asked. Her voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear her. She was looking at me, waiting. I picked up the salt shaker and handed it to her. Our fingers didn't touch. "Thank you," she said. My husband looked down at his plate. He hadn't looked at me once since we sat down. "This is really good," Rachel said, gesturing to her plate with her fork. "You're a great cook." I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. Dinner lasted 30 minutes. It felt like 3 hours. When we finished, Rachel offered to help me clean up. I told her it was fine. She looked relieved. My husband took her upstairs while I washed the dishes alone. By the time I finished, the house was quiet. I walked upstairs slowly. The guest room door was closed. I could see a thin line of light glowing underneath it. I went into our bedroom. My bedroom. I changed into my pajamas and got into bed. The sheets were cold. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and stared at the ceiling. Then I heard it. Laughter. Soft at first, then louder. It was coming from the guest room. Her laugh was high and light. His was deeper, familiar. I hadn't heard him laugh like that in months, maybe years. I closed my eyes and tried to block it out, but I couldn't. The sound seeped through the walls like smoke. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. My hands were shaking. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Daniel. I hadn't spoken to him in 5 years. Not since I got married, not since I chose my husband over him. I typed out a message. My fingers moved slowly, carefully. I need your help. I stared at the words for a long time. Then I hit send. 3 dots appeared immediately. He was typing. My heart pounded in my chest. I could still hear them laughing through the wall. His message came through. Tell me everything. I took a deep breath. And I did. I woke up at 6 in the morning. The sun wasn't up yet. The house was still dark and quiet. My husband was sleeping next to me, his back turned toward me like it had been for months. I could hear his steady breathing, deep and calm, like nothing in his world had changed. I slipped out of bed without making a sound. My feet touched the cold floor. I grabbed my robe from the chair and wrapped it around myself. The guest room door was still closed when I walked past it. She was probably still asleep. I went downstairs and turned on the kitchen light. The brightness hurt my eyes for a moment. I blinked and walked to the coffee maker. I filled it with water and ground beans. The smell of coffee started to fill the kitchen within minutes. Then I opened the fridge. Eggs, bacon, bread, butter, milk. I pulled everything out and set it on the counter. I was going to make breakfast for all 3 of us. My hands moved on their own, cracking eggs into a bowl, whisking them with a fork, laying strips of bacon in a pan. The sizzle was loud in the quiet house. I flipped the bacon, poured the eggs into another pan, slid bread into the toaster. I didn't think while I cooked, I just moved, one step after another. By the time I heard footsteps on the stairs, everything was ready. 3 plates, 3 cups of coffee, 3 sets of silverware. My husband walked in first. He stopped when he saw the table. His eyes moved from the food to me. He looked surprised, maybe even confused. Good morning, I said. My voice sounded normal, calm. Morning, he said slowly. He sat down in his usual spot. A minute later, Rachel appeared in the doorway. She was wearing pajamas, soft pink pants, and a white tank top. Her hair was messy. She looked younger in the morning light, more vulnerable. She saw the table and froze. I made breakfast, I said. I gestured to the empty chair. Sit down. She looked at my husband. He nodded slightly. She walked over and sat down carefully, like she was afraid the chair might break under her. I sat down across from her. I picked up my fork and started eating. After a few seconds, they did too. The silence was heavy. I could feel both of them watching me, waiting for me to say something, to do something, to explode. But I didn't. This is really good, Rachel said quietly. She was looking down at her plate. Thank you. You're welcome, I said. My husband looked relieved. His shoulders relaxed. He took a sip of his coffee and glanced at me like he was seeing me for the first time in weeks. I kept eating. I kept smiling. After breakfast, I stood up and started clearing the plates. Rachel jumped up to help me. It's okay, I said. I've got it. No, please, let me help. Her voice was soft, almost pleading. I handed her 2 plates. We walked to the sink together. I washed. She dried. My husband sat at the table watching us like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. When we finished, I turned to Rachel. Do you need help unpacking? She blinked. What? Your suitcases. Do you need help putting your things away? She hesitated. Her hand moved to her belly, a protective gesture. I don't want to bother you. It's no bother, I said. I kept my voice light. Easy. Like we were friends, like this was normal. She looked at my husband again. He was staring at his coffee cup. He didn't say anything. Okay, Rachel said finally. That would be nice. We went upstairs together. She opened the guest room door and I followed her inside. Her suitcases were still on the floor where my husband had left them last night. The bed was unmade. The room smelled like her perfume, something floral and sweet. She unzipped the first suitcase. I knelt down next to her and started pulling out clothes. Sweaters, jeans, dresses, everything was soft and feminine, pastels and neutrals. I folded each piece carefully. I stacked them on the bed. Rachel watched me with wide eyes, like she couldn't understand why I was being kind to her. I reached into the suitcase and pulled out a folded stack of papers. They slipped from between two shirts. I caught them before they hit the floor. Sorry, Rachel said quickly. She reached for them, but I'd already seen it. A hospital letter. The logo was printed at the top, blue and white, official. I saw her name, Rachel Morrison, and underneath it, a due date circled in red ink, March 15th, 4 months from now. I looked up at her. She was staring at me. Her face had gone pale. I'm sorry, she whispered. I kept looking at her eyes. They were green, light green like sea glass, and they weren't sorry at all. They were scared, maybe even defiant, but not sorry. For what? I asked. My voice was still calm. For all of this. She gestured around the room, at the suitcases, at herself. For being here. For everything. I folded the papers and handed them back to her. Then I smiled. A real smile. The kind that reaches your eyes. Congratulations, I said. On the baby. She took the papers from my hand. She didn't say anything. She just stared at me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. I stood up. My knees felt weak, but I didn't let it show. I walked to the door and put my hand on the knob. Let me know if you need anything else, I said. Then I walked out and closed the door behind me. I went straight to the bathroom at the end of the hall. I locked the door. I turned on the sink so they couldn't hear me. And then I pressed my back against the door and slid down to the floor. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. I pulled my knees to my chest and wrapped my arms around them. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. In and out, in and out. But all I could see was that date circled in red. March 15th, the same month we were supposed to celebrate our 9th wedding anniversary. I sat in the bathroom for 20 minutes, maybe longer. I lost track of time. The cold tile floor pressed against my legs. The sink was still running, water hitting the porcelain in a steady rhythm. When I finally stood up, my legs were numb. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red. My face was pale, but I wasn't crying anymore. I turned off the sink. I washed my face with cold water. I dried my hands. I unlocked the door and walked out like nothing had happened. The house was quiet again. I heard the television on downstairs, low voices, a laugh track from some sitcom. I went into the bedroom and grabbed my phone from the nightstand. Daniel had responded to my message from last night. 3 more texts were waiting for me. When can you talk? Are you okay? Emily, answer me. I sat on the edge of the bed and typed back. Can you meet me tonight? The 3 dots appeared immediately. Where? The coffee shop on 5th Street. Midnight. I'll be there. I put my phone in my pocket and went back downstairs. My husband and Rachel were sitting on the couch. She was leaning against him. His arm was around her shoulders. They looked comfortable, like they'd been doing this for years. Neither of them looked up when I walked past. I spent the rest of the day cleaning, washing dishes, folding laundry, vacuuming carpets. I kept myself busy. I kept my mind empty. Every time I started to think about the date circled in red, I found something else to do. By 11:30 that night, the house was spotless. My husband had already gone to bed. Rachel was in the guest room with the door closed. I could see the light still on underneath. I grabbed my coat and my keys. I wrote a note and left it on the kitchen counter. Couldn't sleep. Went for a drive. I walked out the front door and got into my car. The engine started with a quiet hum. I backed out of the driveway and headed toward downtown. The coffee shop was small, a local place that stayed open 24 hours. I'd been there a few times with friends. Late night study sessions back in college. Girls' nights that ran too long. I parked across the street and checked the time. 11:58. I got out and walked to the door. A small bell rang when I pushed it open. The place was nearly empty. A barista behind the counter, an old man reading a newspaper in the corner, and Daniel. He was sitting at a table by the window. He looked different than I remembered. His hair was shorter. He wore glasses now, a dark sweater and jeans. He looked up when I walked in and stood immediately. Emily, he said. My name sounded different when he said it, softer, like it meant something. Hi, I said. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Then he gestured to the chair across from him. I sat down. He sat down too. Do you want coffee? He asked. No, thank you. He nodded. He had a folder on the table in front of him. Plain manila, the edges were worn. You said you needed help, he said. His voice was calm, professional. Tell me what's going on. So I did. I told him everything about the doorbell ringing, about Rachel standing on the porch with her suitcases and her pregnant belly, about how my husband brought her into our home like it was the most normal thing in the world, about the dinner table, the laughter through the wall, the hospital letter with the due date circled in red. Daniel listened without interrupting. His face didn't change. He just watched me. His eyes never left mine. When I finished, he leaned forward and slid the folder across the table. Open it, he said. I did. Inside were documents, legal papers, bank statements, business records. I recognized some of the accounts. They were joint accounts, mine and my husband's. How did you get these? I asked. I'm a lawyer now, Daniel said. I have access to certain records, especially when there's probable cause. I looked up at him. Probable cause for what? Fraud, embezzlement, asset hiding. He pointed to one of the bank statements. Your husband has been moving money out of your joint accounts for the past 6 months. Small amounts. Never enough to trigger an alert, but it adds up. I stared at the numbers. Transfers, withdrawals, dates and times I didn't recognize. He's been paying for her apartment, Daniel continued. Her medical bills, her groceries, everything. And he's been using your money to do it. My hand started shaking. I put the papers down before I dropped them. There's more, Daniel said. He pulled out another document. The business, the one you both co-own. He's been using company funds to pay for personal expenses. That's illegal. If the IRS finds out, you could both be charged. But I didn't know, I said quickly. I didn't do any of this. I know. His voice was gentle. That's why we need to act fast, before this gets worse. I looked at him, really looked at him. He didn't look like a lawyer, he looked like Daniel. The guy I used to know, the guy I used to love. But when he spoke, every word was careful, calculated, professional. What do I do? I asked. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes locked on mine. Are you ready to lose everything to win everything? I didn't understand the question at first, then I did. He was asking if I was ready to fight, really fight, not just for the house or the money or the business, but for myself, for my dignity, for my future. Yes, I said. He smiled. Just a little. Good. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a pen. He clicked it once and slid it across the table to me. I need you to sign some papers. I'll file them first thing Monday morning. Divorce, asset freeze, emergency injunction, love it. But you need to be sure. Once we start this, there's no going back. I picked up the pen. My hand was steady now. I'm sure, I said. He opened the folder again and pointed to 3 different places. I signed my name on each line. Emily Carter, the name I'd had for 8 years, the name I was about to take back. When I finished, Daniel gathered the papers and put them back in the folder. He stood up. I stood up too. What do I need to do now? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said 3 words that changed everything. Document everything, hide nothing. I nodded slowly. I understood. We walked out of the coffee shop together. The cold night air hit my face. I took a deep breath. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in days. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me yet, Daniel said. This is just the beginning. I got into my car and watched him walk to his. He gave me a small wave before he drove away. I sat there for a few minutes, alone in the dark. The folder was on the passenger seat next to me. I touched it lightly. The paper felt real, solid, like proof that I wasn't imagining this. For the first time in months, I felt powerful. I started the car and drove home. When I got home that night, the house was dark except for one light upstairs, the guest room. I parked in the driveway and sat in the car for a minute. The folder was still on the passenger seat. I picked it up and held it against my chest. Document everything, hide nothing. I walked inside quietly. The living room was empty, the television was off. I went upstairs and passed the guest room. The door was closed, but I could hear soft music playing inside. Something slow and classical. I went into the bedroom and closed the door behind me. My husband was already asleep. His back was turned toward me like always. I changed into my pajamas and got into bed. I didn't try to fall asleep. I just stared at the ceiling and made a plan. The next morning, I woke up early again. But this time, I didn't go downstairs to make breakfast. I stayed in bed and listened to the sounds of the house waking up. Footsteps in the hallway, the guest room door opening and closing. My husband's voice downstairs, quiet and muffled. Then Rachel's voice, lighter, almost cheerful. I waited until I heard the front door close, my husband leaving for work. Then I got up and got dressed. I went downstairs slowly. Rachel was in the kitchen. She was wearing one of my aprons, the blue one with white flowers. She was standing at the stove making eggs. Toast was already on a plate. Coffee was brewing. She looked up when I walked in. "Good morning," she said. She smiled. "I made breakfast. I hope that's okay." I looked at the apron, at the eggs in the pan, at the way she moved around my kitchen like she knew where everything was. "It's fine," I said. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the table. She brought a plate over and set it in front of me. Then she sat down across from me with her own plate. We ate in silence. That day, I didn't cook dinner. I stayed in the bedroom and worked on my laptop. I heard Rachel moving around downstairs, opening cabinets, running water. The smell of food drifted up through the house. When my husband came home, I heard them eating together, talking quietly, laughing. No one called me down. No one knocked on the door to ask where I was. The second day, I didn't cook dinner either. I stayed upstairs again. This time I heard Rachel cleaning, the vacuum running, dishes clattering in the sink. She was humming to herself. My husband came home and I heard them again, talking, eating, existing without me. On the third day, my husband finally noticed. He came upstairs while I was sitting on the bed with my laptop. He knocked once and opened the door without waiting for an answer. "Are you okay?" he asked. I looked up at him. "I'm fine. You haven't been eating with us." "I've been busy." He stood there for a moment, like he wanted to say something else. Then he nodded and left. That afternoon, I came downstairs to get water. Rachel was in the living room. She was moving furniture. The couch was pushed against the wall. The coffee table was gone. She was putting a rocking chair in the corner by the window. "What are you doing?" I asked. She turned around. "Oh, I hope you don't mind. I thought this space would be better for the baby. The light is nice here in the afternoon." I looked at the rocking chair, at the empty space where my coffee table used to be. "Where's the table?" I asked. "I put it in the basement. It was taking up too much room." I stared at her. She looked back at me with those green eyes, waiting for me to say something, waiting for me to fight. I didn't. "Okay," I said. I walked back upstairs with my water. That evening, Rachel was in the guest room again. I heard her moving things around, opening and closing drawers. My husband came home and went straight upstairs to see her. I stayed in the bedroom with the door closed. An hour later, he came in. He looked nervous. "Emily," he said, "we need to talk." I closed my laptop. "About what?" He sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't look at me. "Rachel needs more space. For the baby. She needs to start setting up the nursery." "The guest room isn't big enough?" I asked. "It's not just the size. It's She needs to feel comfortable. She needs to feel like this is her space too." I waited. I knew what was coming. "I think it would be better if you slept on the couch for a while," he said, "just until we figure things out." The room was very quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat. "You want me to sleep on the couch?" I repeated. "Just for a little while," he said quickly. "It's not permanent. It's just easier this way." I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man I married 8 years ago, the man who promised to love me and protect me, the man who was now asking me to give up my own bed so his pregnant mistress could be more comfortable. "Okay," I said. His head snapped up. "What?" "Okay, I'll sleep on the couch." He stared at me, his mouth opened slightly. He looked confused, maybe even disappointed, like he wanted me to fight, like he wanted me to scream and cry and make this harder for him. But I didn't. I stood up and grabbed my pillow. I walked past him without saying another word. I went downstairs and made up the couch with a blanket from the closet. I lay down and closed my eyes. I heard him come downstairs an hour later. He stood in the doorway for a long time. I didn't move. Eventually, he went back upstairs. That night, I heard them. In my bed, in my room. The sounds were soft at first, then louder, the bed creaking. Her voice, his voice. I lay on the couch and stared at the ceiling. My hands were clenched into fists. But I wasn't crying. I reached for my laptop on the coffee table. I opened it and the screen glowed blue in the dark living room. I logged into our bank accounts. The joint ones, the ones with both our names on them. I started transferring money, not all of it, just enough that he wouldn't notice right away. Small amounts from different accounts. I moved it into a new account, one I'd opened that morning, one with only my name on it. Transfer, click, confirm, transfer, click, confirm. I worked quietly, methodically. The sounds from upstairs faded into the background. I didn't think about them. I didn't think about anything except the numbers on the screen. By the time the sun started to rise, 3 accounts were empty, and one new account was full. I closed my laptop and finally went to sleep. I woke up on the couch with sunlight streaming through the living room window. My neck was stiff. My back hurt. The blanket had fallen to the floor during the night. I sat up slowly and looked around. The house was quiet, too quiet. I checked my phone. 8:30 in the morning. My husband had already left for work. I didn't hear any sounds from upstairs. Maybe Rachel was still sleeping. I stood up and folded the blanket. I put the pillow back on the couch. Then I went upstairs to shower and change. When I passed the bedroom, the door was open. The bed was unmade. Her perfume still hung in the air. I showered quickly and got dressed. I needed to get out of the house. I needed air, space, distance. I grabbed my purse and keys and left without saying goodbye to anyone. I drove to the grocery store across town, the one I didn't usually go to. I didn't want to run into anyone I knew. I just wanted to be alone. The store was busy, shopping carts rolling down aisles, kids crying, people talking on phones. I grabbed a basket and started walking. I didn't have a list. I just put things in the basket without thinking. Bread, milk, apples, coffee. And I was standing in the cereal aisle when someone said my name. Emily. I turned around. A man was standing behind me. He was tall, maybe 40, dark hair with gray at the temples. He wore a suit, navy blue with a white shirt. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. Yes, I said. I've been looking for you, he said. My stomach dropped. Excuse me? He took a step closer, not threatening, just closer. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm your husband's business partner. Recognition hit me like a wave. Marcus. I'd met him once at a company party 2 years ago. We'd talked for maybe 5 minutes. He seemed nice, quiet. What do you want? I asked. I need to talk to you. It's important. I looked around. People were shopping. No one was paying attention to us. About what? Not here, he said. He glanced over his shoulder. Can we go somewhere private? Every instinct told me to say no, to walk away. But something in his eyes stopped me. He looked desperate, scared even. Why? I asked. He leaned in slightly. His voice dropped to a whisper. I know about the affair. My hands tightened on the shopping basket. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, he said. Rachel Morrison, 25 years old, pregnant, living in your house. I stared at him. My heart was pounding. How do you know that? I asked. Because your husband has been stealing from the company to pay for it, Marcus said. Her apartment before she moved in, her medical bills, everything. And I have proof. I couldn't breathe. The store suddenly felt too small, too loud, too bright. I don't believe you, I whispered. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. It was black and silver. He held it between his thumb and index finger. Everything is on here, he said. Bank transfers, receipts, emails, text messages. It's enough to destroy him. I looked at the USB drive, then at Marcus. Why are you telling me this? Because he destroyed my marriage too, Marcus said. His voice was hard, bitter. 2 years ago, he had an affair with my wife. I found out when she left me, took half of everything, and moved to California with him paying for the lawyer. I felt like the floor was tilting under my feet. Your husband is a liar, Marcus continued, and a thief, and I'm done protecting him. He held out the USB drive. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I took it. The plastic was cold in my palm. What do I do with this? I asked. Whatever you want, Marcus said. Give it to a lawyer, give it to the police, or keep it as insurance, but don't let him get away with it. I closed my fist around the USB drive. Why should I trust you? Marcus smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was sad, tired. You shouldn't, but you don't have many options right now, and neither do I. He gestured toward the front of the store. My car's outside. If you want to know more, come with me. If not, walk away. But either way, that drive is yours now. I should have walked away. I should have gone home. But I didn't. I followed him. His car was a black sedan, clean and new. He unlocked it and we both got in. He started the engine but didn't drive anywhere. We just sat there in the parking lot. Show me, I said. Marcus pulled out his phone and connected the USB drive to it with an adapter. He opened a folder and handed me the phone. I scrolled through the files. Bank statements showing transfers from the company account to a personal account, then from that account to Rachel's apartment complex, to a medical clinic, to a furniture store. There were emails, my husband writing to Rachel, telling her he loved her, telling her not to worry about money, telling her he would take care of everything. There were text messages, hundreds of them, going back months, maybe even a year. I stopped scrolling. My hands were shaking. How did you get all of this? I asked. I'm the CFO, Marcus said. I have access to the company accounts, and your husband isn't as careful as he thinks he is. I handed the phone back to him. I felt numb. What do you want me to do? I asked. I want you to help me take him down, Marcus said. He's been embezzling from the company for over a year. If we report it, he'll be arrested. He'll lose everything, the business, the house, his reputation, all of it. And what do you get out of this? I asked. Justice, Marcus said simply. And maybe a little revenge. I looked out the window. People were walking in and out of the store, living their normal lives. I used to have a normal life. Now I was sitting in a stranger's car planning to destroy my husband. If we do this, he could go to prison, I said. Yes, Marcus said. He could. I thought about Rachel, about the baby, about the bed I wasn't allowed to sleep in anymore, about the USB drive in my hand. Okay, I said. Tell me what to do. We sat in that car for 2 hours. Marcus showed me everything, explained every transaction, every lie, every crime. By the time we were done, I knew exactly what my husband had been doing, and I knew exactly how to stop him. When I finally got out of the car, the USB drive was still in my hand. Marcus gave me his number and told me to call him when I was ready. I drove home in silence. When I walked through the front door, Rachel was in the kitchen making lunch. She smiled at me like nothing was wrong. I smiled back, and I went upstairs to hide the USB drive where no one would ever find it. I hid the USB drive in the back of my closet, behind a box of old photos I never looked at, behind shoes I never wore. No one would find it there. No one would even think to look. I spent the rest of the day pretending everything was normal. I made dinner, I cleaned the kitchen, I smiled when my husband came home. He kissed Rachel on the forehead and asked how she was feeling. She said she was tired but happy. Neither of them asked where I'd been. That night, I slept on the couch again. I was getting used to it now. The way the cushions pressed into my back, the way the blanket was never quite warm enough, the way I could hear every sound in the house from down here. Around midnight, I finally fell asleep. 2 hours later, I woke up to screaming. It was loud, piercing, coming from upstairs. I sat up fast. My heart was racing. For a second, I didn't know what was happening. Then I heard it again. Rachel. I threw off the blanket and ran upstairs. The bedroom door was open. The light was on. My husband was standing next to the bed in his boxer shorts. His hair was messy. His face was white. Rachel was on the bed. She was bent over, one hand on her stomach, one hand gripping the sheets. She was breathing hard, fast. Her face was red and wet with tears. "What's happening?" I asked. My husband turned to look at me. His eyes were wild. "I think she's in labor." Rachel screamed again. Her whole body tensed. She squeezed her eyes shut. "We need to get her to the hospital," I said. "I know," my husband said, but he didn't move. He just stood there, frozen. "Call an ambulance," I said. "No, no, I'll drive her. He looked around the room like he was lost. "I can't think. I can't focus." Rachel grabbed his arm. "Please," she gasped. "It hurts." My husband looked at me, really looked at me. "Can you drive us?" I stared at him, at the panic in his eyes, at Rachel doubled over in pain on my bed, at the situation I never thought I'd be in. "Please," he said again. "I'm too scared. I can't do it." Part of me wanted to say no. Part of me wanted to walk back downstairs and let them figure it out. But another part of me, the part that still remembered being human, couldn't do that. "Get her dressed," I said. "I'll get the car." I went downstairs and grabbed my keys. I started the car and pulled it up to the front door. My husband came out a minute later with Rachel leaning on him. She was wearing sweatpants and one of his t-shirts. Her face was twisted in pain. He helped her into the back seat. Then he got in next to her. I got in the driver's seat and started driving. The hospital was 20 minutes away. Rachel screamed 4 more times during the drive. Each time my husband held her hand and told her to breathe. Each time I gripped the steering wheel tighter and drove faster. When we got to the emergency room, my husband jumped out and ran inside. He came back with a nurse in a wheelchair. They helped Rachel into it and rushed her inside. I parked the car and followed them in. The waiting room was bright and cold. White walls, blue chairs, a television playing the news with the sound off. There were a few other people scattered around. An old man, a young couple, a woman holding a sleeping child. I sat down in a chair by the window. My husband was gone. He'd followed Rachel into the delivery room. No one asked me to come. No one even looked at me. I sat there alone. An hour passed, then 2. I watched people come and go, nurses walking fast with clipboards, doctors in white coats, families hugging and crying. A nurse walked up to me. She was older, gray hair pulled back in a bun, kind eyes. "Are you family?" she asked. I looked up at her. "I'm the wife." Her face changed. The kindness disappeared. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. She looked at me like she understood everything without me having to explain. "I see," she said quietly. Then she walked away. I sat there for 3 more hours. I didn't have my phone charger. My battery was at 15%. I watched it drop lower and lower. At 6 in the morning, the delivery room doors opened. My husband walked out. He was wearing scrubs. A blue cap covered his hair, and in his arms was a baby, wrapped in a pink blanket, tiny and red-faced. He was smiling. Really smiling. The kind of smile I hadn't seen in years. He looked down at the baby like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. He walked past the waiting room, right past me. He didn't even glance in my direction. He went to the window where the nurses were and started talking to them, showing them the baby, laughing. I sat there watching him hold another woman's child, watching him be happy in a way he'd never been with me. I stood up slowly. My legs felt weak. I walked to the vending machine in the corner. I stared at the rows of candy and chips and drinks. I pulled out my phone, 12% battery left. I opened my messages and found Daniel's number. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment. Then I typed 4 words. "File the papers. Now." I hit send. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then his response came through. "Consider it done." I put my phone in my pocket. I bought a bottle of water from the vending machine, even though I wasn't thirsty. I opened it and took a sip. The water was cold. It hurt going down. My husband was still at the nurse's station, still holding the baby, still smiling. I walked toward the exit. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. I got in the car and sat there for a long time. The sun was starting to rise. The sky was turning pink and orange. It was beautiful. I hadn't noticed beauty in a long time. I started the car and drove home. The house was empty when I got there. Quiet. I walked upstairs to the bedroom. The sheets were still messy from where Rachel had been lying. I stripped the bed and put the sheets in the washing machine. Then I went to my closet and pulled out the USB drive. I held it in my hand and looked at it. This small piece of plastic that held so much power. I put it in my purse. I wasn't hiding it anymore. I went downstairs and made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table and waited for the sun to come all the way up. And I waited for my husband to come home and find out what I'd done. I sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee and waiting. The sun came up slowly. Light filled the house one room at a time. I didn't move. I just sat there with my hands wrapped around the warm mug. At 8:30, I heard a car in the driveway. The front door opened. My husband walked in first. He looked exhausted. His eyes were red. His clothes were wrinkled. He was carrying a car seat with the baby inside. Rachel came in behind him. She moved slowly, carefully. Like every step hurt. Her face was pale. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. They both stopped when they saw me sitting at the table. "You're home," my husband said. He sounded surprised. "I live here," I said. He nodded. He looked uncomfortable, like he didn't know what to say. Rachel walked past him and went upstairs without a word. She was holding her stomach, moving like she was in pain. My husband set the car seat down on the couch. The baby was sleeping. Her little face was peaceful, innocent. "Did you get any sleep?" he asked me. "Some," I lied. He nodded again. "I'm going to help Rachel get settled, then I'll make breakfast." "Don't bother," I said. "I'm not hungry." He looked at me for a long moment, like he wanted to say something. Then he picked up the car seat and went upstairs. I finished my coffee and washed the mug. I was drying my hands when the doorbell rang. I walked to the front door and opened it. A man in a suit was standing on the porch. He was young, maybe 30. He had a folder in his hands. "Can I help you?" I asked. "Is this the Carter residence?" he asked. "Yes." "Is James Carter home?" "Yes," I said. "Who's asking?" "I need to deliver some documents to him. Is he available?" I stepped back and called upstairs. "James, someone's here for you." I heard footsteps. My husband came down the stairs. He looked confused. When he saw the man in the suit, he frowned. "Can I help you?" my husband asked. The man held out the folder. "James Carter?" "Yes." "You've been served." My husband took the folder. His hands were shaking slightly. The man in the suit nodded to me and walked back to his car. My husband closed the door. He opened the folder slowly. I watched his face. Watched the confusion turn to shock. Watched the color drain from his skin. His hands started shaking harder. "What is this?" he whispered. "What is it?" I asked. My voice was calm, steady. He looked up at me. His eyes were wide. "Divorce papers." "Oh," I said. He kept reading. His face went even whiter. "A lawsuit for embezzlement and a restraining order." Upstairs, I heard Rachel's voice. "What's going on?" My husband didn't answer. He just stood there staring at the papers. His mouth was open. He looked like he couldn't breathe. Rachel appeared at the top of the stairs. She was holding the baby. "James, what's happening?" He still didn't answer. His hands were shaking so hard the papers were rattling. I walked past him and went upstairs. I went into the guest room where Rachel had been staying. I grabbed the suitcase I'd hidden in the closet days ago. The one I'd already packed. Clothes, documents, the USB drive, everything I needed. I walked back downstairs with the suitcase in my hand. My husband was still standing in the same spot, still holding the papers. Rachel was halfway down the stairs now. She looked scared. "Emily," my husband said. His voice cracked. "What did you do?" I looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who brought his mistress into our home, who asked me to sleep on the couch, who held another woman's baby and didn't even look at me in the hospital. "I'm done pretending to be weak," I said. His face crumpled. "You can't do this." "I already did." "Emily, please." He took a step toward me. "We can talk about this. We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I said. You broke it. You broke us. You broke everything. I made a mistake, he said. His voice was desperate now. I know I did, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can. No, I said. We can't. He reached for me, his hand wrapped around my wrist. Not hard, not to hurt me, but to stop me, to keep me from leaving. Please don't do this, he begged. I love you. I looked down at his hand on my wrist. Then I looked up at his face, at the tears in his eyes, at the panic, at the fear of losing everything. You should have thought about that before you brought her into our home, I said. I pulled my wrist away from him. He didn't try to hold on. His hand just dropped to his side. The restraining order means you can't contact me, I said. The lawsuit means you're going to lose the business. The divorce means you're going to lose the house. And the evidence I gave to the police means you might lose your freedom. His legs seemed to give out. He sat down hard on the stairs. The papers fell from his hands and scattered across the floor. Rachel was crying now. The baby started crying too. The sound filled the house, high and loud and piercing. You had everything, I said quietly, and you threw it all away for her. I picked up my suitcase and walked to the door. My hand was on the knob when my husband spoke again. Where will you go? He asked. His voice was small, broken. Somewhere you'll never find me, I said. I opened the door and walked out. The morning air was cold and fresh. It felt like freedom. I put my suitcase in the trunk of my car. I got in the driver's seat and started the engine. Through the window, I could see my husband still sitting on the stairs. His head was in his hands. Rachel was standing next to him with the baby. Both of them were crying. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway. I didn't look back. I just drove. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled over a block away and checked it. A message from Daniel. Papers filed, lawsuit submitted, police have the USB drive. It's done. I typed back 2 words, thank you. Then I turned off my phone and kept driving. Toward a new life. Toward freedom. Toward whatever came next. Away from the man who stopped deserving me a long time ago. I drove for an hour before I stopped. I pulled into a parking lot outside a small cafe. My hands were still shaking. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My phone was off. I didn't want to hear it ring. I didn't want to see his name. I didn't want anything from that house to follow me here. I sat in the car and breathed. In and out, in and out. After a while, I turned my phone back on. Messages flooded in immediately. 23 missed calls from my husband, 15 text messages. I didn't read them. I deleted them all. There was one message from Daniel, meeting scheduled for tomorrow, 2 p.m., courthouse downtown, conference room 3, be there. I typed back, I'll be there. I spent that night in a hotel, a small one near the highway. The room was clean but basic. A bed, a desk, a television. I didn't sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling. The next day, I got up early. I showered. I put on the only professional clothes I'd packed. A black dress, simple, clean. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were tired but determined. I drove to the courthouse. It was a large building made of gray stone. People were walking in and out, lawyers in suits, families holding hands, security guards checking bags. I went through security and found conference room 3. The door was closed. I checked the time, 1:55. I was early. I sat on a bench outside and waited. My heart was pounding, my palms were sweaty. I kept my hands folded in my lap so no one could see them shaking. At exactly 2 o'clock, Daniel appeared. He was wearing a dark suit. His briefcase was in his hand. He looked professional, confident. Ready? He asked. Yes, I said. He opened the door and we walked in together. The room was small. A long wooden table in the center, chairs on both sides. At the head of the table sat a judge. She was older, gray hair, sharp eyes. She wore a black robe even though this wasn't a courtroom. On one side of the table sat my husband. He looked terrible. His face was pale, his eyes were bloodshot, his suit was wrinkled. Next to him sat his lawyer, a man in his 50s with slicked back hair and an expensive watch. On the other side of the table were 2 empty chairs. Daniel gestured for me to sit. I did. He sat next to me. No one spoke for a moment. The judge was reading through papers. My husband stared at the table. His lawyer whispered something to him, but he didn't respond. Finally, the judge looked up. "We're here to discuss the terms of the divorce between Emily Carter and James Carter," she said. Her voice was firm, clear. "There are also allegations of embezzlement and fraud that will be addressed. Mr. Carter, do you understand why we're here?" My husband nodded. "Yes." "Good," the judge said. She looked at Daniel. "Counselor, you may begin." Daniel opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. He slid it across the table to the judge. She opened it and started reading. "My client is seeking full dissolution of the marriage," Daniel said. "She is also seeking full ownership of the marital home, 50% ownership of the business known as Carter Consulting, and full restitution for funds that were illegally transferred from joint accounts." My husband's lawyer leaned forward. "Your Honor, my client disputes these claims. There is no evidence of—" "Actually," Daniel interrupted. He looked at me. "Mrs. Carter, if you would." I reached into my purse and pulled out the USB drive. My hands were steady now. I handed it to Daniel. He plugged it into the laptop that was sitting on the table. The screen came to life. "What is this?" the judge asked. "Evidence," Daniel said. He opened the first file. Bank statements appeared on the screen, rows and rows of transactions. Highlighted in yellow were transfers from our joint account to a personal account in my husband's name, then from that account to Rachel Morrison. The judge leaned forward. She put on her reading glasses and studied the screen. Daniel clicked to the next file. Text messages. My husband's phone number at the top. Messages to Rachel. Dozens of them. Hundreds. "I'll take care of everything. Don't worry about money. I love you. She doesn't understand me like you do." My husband's face went red, then white. He looked like he was going to be sick. Daniel clicked again. Receipts, hotel rooms, dinners, flowers, jewelry, all paid for with company funds, all dated over the past year. Then another file. Payments to Rachel's apartment complex, medical bills from her doctor, furniture deliveries to her address. The judge took off her glasses. She looked at my husband. "Mr. Carter, is this your phone number?" He didn't answer. "Mr. Carter," she said again, louder this time. "Answer the question." His lawyer leaned over and whispered something in his ear. My husband's face crumbled. His shoulders slumped. He looked defeated. "Yes," he whispered. "And did you authorize these transfers?" the judge asked. His lawyer whispered again. My husband shook his head. "I don't have to answer that." "You do if you want to avoid criminal charges," the judge said. Her voice was cold now. "I'm going to ask you one more time. Did you authorize these transfers from the business account for personal use?" Silence filled the room. My husband stared at the table. His hands were shaking. His lawyer was writing something on a notepad. "Mr. Carter," the judge said, "do you have anything to say?" He looked up at me. Our eyes met across the table. For a moment, I saw the man I married, the man who used to make me laugh, the man who used to hold my hand. But that man was gone. The person sitting across from me now was a stranger. "No," he finally said, "I have nothing to say." The judge closed the folder. She looked at Daniel. "Counselor, present the settlement terms." Daniel slid another set of papers across the table. The judge read them carefully. Then she looked at my husband's lawyer. "Do you have any objections?" she asked. The lawyer whispered to my husband again. My husband just shook his head. "No objections," the lawyer said quietly. The judge picked up a pen. She signed the papers. Then she slid them across the table to me. "Mrs. Carter, if you agree to these terms, sign here." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. I signed my name on every line. Emily Carter, my name, my signature, my freedom. The judge took the papers back. "This divorce is finalized. Mrs. Carter will retain full ownership of the marital home. She will receive 50% ownership of Carter Consulting, and Mr. Carter will repay all illegally transferred funds within 90 days. She looked at my husband. "You should also know that copies of this evidence have been submitted to the district attorney's office. You may be facing criminal charges for embezzlement. I suggest you speak with your lawyer about that." My husband's head dropped into his hands. The judge stood up. "We're done here." Everyone stood. Daniel shook the judge's hand. I gathered my things. My husband didn't move. He just sat there with his head in his hands. I walked to the door. Daniel followed me out. When we got to the hallway, I stopped. My legs felt weak. I leaned against the wall. Are you okay? Daniel asked. I nodded. I'm free. He smiled. Yes, you are. 6 months passed like pages turning in a book, each day a little different from the last, each week bringing something new. I woke up one Monday morning in my apartment. Sunlight streamed through the windows. I made coffee and got dressed. A navy suit, professional, confident. I looked at myself in the mirror and smiled. Today was important. I drove downtown to the office building where Carter Consulting used to be. The name had changed. It was called Carter and Associates now. My name, my business. I parked in the spot that used to be my husband's, the one right by the front door. I walked inside and took the elevator to the third floor. When the doors opened, I saw it. The glass door with gold lettering. Emily Carter, CEO, my name. On the door, on the business cards, on everything. I walked inside. The office was busy, phones ringing, people typing. 3 new employees I'd hired over the past few months were already at their desks. Sarah, Michael, and Lisa. They all looked up when I walked in. They smiled. Real smiles. Not the fake ones I used to see. Good morning, Emily, Sarah said. Good morning, I said. I went to my office. It was corner office, big windows, a view of the city. My desk was clean, organized, a laptop, a coffee mug, a framed photo of me and Daniel from a charity event we'd attended last month. I sat down and opened my laptop. Emails flooded in, clients, new contracts, meetings scheduled for the week. The business was thriving, better than it ever had been when my ex-husband ran it. I worked through the morning, meetings, phone calls, reviewing contracts. By lunchtime, I was exhausted but happy. The good kind of exhausted, the kind that comes from doing something you love. I grabbed my coat and went out for lunch. There was a small cafe down the street. I walked there with my hands in my pockets. The air was cold. Fall was turning into winter. As I crossed the street, I saw him, my ex-husband. He was standing on the opposite corner, waiting for the light to change. He looked different, smaller somehow. His shoulders were hunched, his face was pale. He wore a jacket I didn't recognize. Cheap, not the expensive suits he used to wear. Our eyes met for a split second. He saw me. I saw the recognition in his face, the shame, the regret. I didn't stop walking. I didn't wave. I didn't acknowledge him at all. I just kept moving forward. When I reached the other side of the street, I looked back once. He was still standing there, watching me. Then the light changed and he disappeared into the crowd. He looked smaller than I remembered, like he'd shrunk, like all the lies and the cheating and the stealing had made him less somehow. I felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, no regret, just nothing. I went into the cafe and ordered lunch. I sat by the window and ate alone. It felt peaceful. That evening, I went to a charity event. It was for a children's hospital. Black tie, fancy. I wore a long red dress. My hair was up. I felt beautiful. Daniel was there. He waved when he saw me. We talked for a while. About work, about life, about everything and nothing. Then a man approached. He was tall, maybe 45, salt and pepper hair, kind eyes. He wore a tuxedo and a genuine smile. "Excuse me," he said. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had to come over and tell you that you look absolutely stunning tonight." I felt my face warm. "Thank you." "I'm Richard," he said. He held out his hand. I shook it. "Emily." "I know," he said. "I've heard a lot about you. You took over Carter Consulting, right? I've heard amazing things." "Thank you," I said again. We talked for a while. He was a doctor. He worked at the children's hospital. He was kind, funny, easy to talk to. When the event was winding down, he asked for my number. Then he asked if I'd like to have dinner sometime. I hesitated, just for a second. Then I smiled. "Yes," I said. "I'd like that." He smiled back. "Great. I'll call you." And he did. 3 days later. We went to dinner at a small Italian restaurant. We talked for 3 hours about our lives, our pasts, our hopes for the future. I didn't talk about my ex-husband, not once. Richard asked if I'd been married before, and I said yes. He asked what happened, and I said it didn't work out. He nodded and didn't push because my ex husband didn't deserve space in my story anymore. He was a chapter I'd closed, a lesson I'd learned, but he wasn't who I was now. We went on more dates, slow and easy, no pressure, no rush, just two people getting to know each other. One night, I came home from dinner with Richard and stood in front of my bathroom mirror. I looked at myself, really looked. My face was the same, my eyes, my smile, but something was different, something deeper. I wasn't the woman who let him break her. I wasn't the woman who slept on the couch while he held someone else. I wasn't the woman who pretended everything was fine when it wasn't. I was the woman who rebuilt herself, who took the broken pieces and made something stronger, something better, something real. I was the woman who walked away, who fought for what she deserved, who created a life that was hers and hers alone. I smiled at my reflection, and for the first time in a long time, I liked who I saw looking back. The next morning, I went to the office early. I had a big meeting with a potential new client, someone who could take the business to the next level. I sat in my office with my coffee and looked out the window. The city was waking up, people rushing to work, cars honking, life moving forward. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Good luck with your meeting today. I know you'll be amazing. I smiled and typed back, thank you. Then I set my phone down and got to work. Because this was my life now, my business, my choices, my future, and it was everything I never knew I needed. I thought about Rachel sometimes, wondered where she was, if she was okay, if she'd found help. But I didn't dwell on it. Her choices were hers. Her consequences were hers. I thought about my ex husband even less. He was just a memory now, a story I sometimes told when people asked why I was so careful about who I let into my life. But mostly, I thought about what came next, about the business growing, about Richard and where that might lead, about the life I was building one day at a time. I stood up and walked to the window. I pressed my hand against the glass and looked out at the city spread before me. This was my second chance, my new beginning, my story, and I was writing it exactly the way I wanted. Don't forget to rate this story and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.